Hello there, welcome back. You look a bit tired today. Tired of playing the same old chromatic exercises? Tired of the endless technique drills? Tired of unmusical guitar workouts? Well, I feel you. So I prepared 10 awesome sounding metal guitar licks for you today that are also great technique exercises, so that you finally have something practical and exciting to work on in your practice routine. So let's start with lick number 1 right away. So the first lick is a quite shreddy one. This one is based on the amazing sounding Phrygian dominant scale. So that's the main idea that all of this is based on. And this lick is perfect for classic metal progressions like that one. So that Phrygian semitone above the root, but instead of the minor third you have the major third in there. And the reason why this is a perfect picking technique exercise, the picking pattern is actually quite tricky. The tricky thing is that you're just playing one note with a downstroke on the higher string and then you switch to an upstroke on the lower string right away. So downstroke on the high E string, upstroke on the B string. And the next really tricky part is at the end of the first line. When the lick starts over, you have to switch from an upstroke on the B string back to a downstroke on the E string again. So as you can see, this one is a great workout for your string transitions. And at the end I included one of my favorite tapping tricks. So you have a quick legato section where it switches from 16th note triplets to 32nd notes. And at the end I'm just playing G sharp on the 9th fret and I'm just slightly touching the fretboard one octave higher. So I'm not tapping the note, I'm just slightly touching it. And that way you get this really cool tapping harmonic. Now that's a completely different idea and sound. With this one it's all about your fretting hand fingers. So that's not just a great legato workout for your hammer-ons and pull-offs, it's also a great exercise for getting a more fluid arpeggio based sound for your guitar solo. So instead of just playing a scale up and down right here, I'm accenting every chord change melodically with a different arpeggio. So the chords in the background are... And for A minor I'm playing... And that's already kind of interesting phrasing wise, because once again I'm not just playing the scale up and down here. I'm trying a bit harder to find more interesting ideas in there. So trying different phrases and giving it a little bit of thought really pays off with your phrasing. You will sound much more interesting right away. So for F major I'm playing, then I'm going down for D minor. So that one is a bit more tricky, but it sounds really great. And a classic small C major 7th arpeggio at the end. And when I'm just playing this line for you, you can really hear the chords moving in your head, which is really cool. Now that's a lick you might have actually recognized. It's often referred to as the dopamine lick by watchers of this channel that tried to learn and cover the main solo of this song. So it's the quite tricky lick that I placed at the end of the solo as a climax, and I got quite a lot of frustrated messages about it on Patreon so far. So let's finally break it down together right now. So the trickiest details about this lick, you have to roll your ring finger and bar the D and G strings in order to play this F minor arpeggio and to really separate the two notes. So you don't want it to sound like this. That sounds kind of messy. So just playing this common minor arpeggio is a great exercise for internalizing that rolling motion. The next challenge for your sweep picking and also for your timing is that you have to switch between 32nd notes and 16th note triplets. So at the end you even have two 16th notes before the tapping with the 32nd note starts. So a lot of quick switching between different note values, and you're not allowed to rush or drag, of course, and that's really challenging.
Were you rushing or were you dragging?
At the end you have this really cool stretch pentatonic tapping. So that's another quite advanced exercise benefit of this particular lick, switching between sweep picking and tapping. And when you put all this together it sounds something like this. Back to the shredding and the exotic sounding scales. This time you can just work with one picking angle for the entire lick, and it looks like this. So that's the downstroke escape motion, so that your pick can escape in between the strings after the downstroke, as opposed to this kind of angle and motion where you escape after an upstroke. So that's the one you want to go for. So although it's kind of fast, the picking is actually not the trickiest aspect of this lick. What's actually quite hard is the stretching with the fretting hand and the unusual scale. So this lick is actually based on the augmented sound and scale. So a really dissonant but awesome sound. I really wish that rock and metal players would use this scale more often, because of course the go-to sound when you want something more dissonant is usually the diminished scale or diminished arpeggios. That's a classic and it sounds really nice, but please don't forget about learning some augmented alternatives as well. And this is a great introduction and also a great exercise for that downstroke escape movement. So to help you as much as I can with mastering these amazing sounding licks and really cool guitar techniques, I uploaded very slow exercise play-along videos with scrolling tabs on Patreon. As always, I also added backing tracks without my guitar, PDF tabs and guitar profiles with full instrumentation. So make sure to download the brand new complete Metal Lick package on Patreon after watching this video to instantly get a fun and effective daily practice routine. Lick number 5 is based on the B harmonic minor scale. And it's based on a classic sequence and pattern that every metal guitar player should know. Playing thirds in the scale, so essentially always skipping one note. I think you have heard something like this before, so it's kind of a cliche line for metal guitar solos, but I made it a bit more interesting. And then I essentially move this concept into the next scale position. And of course, to include a challenge for you, there's a quick 16th note triplet run at the end. For this one you can work with the downstroke escape movement again to get it really nice, clean and tight. So if you're looking for a great mid-tempo picking workout with focus on hand synchronization and string transitions, this is the one that I would go for in my next practice routine. This is a great example of how I like to approach pentatonic licks nowadays to make them a little bit more interesting. As you could see, instead of the traditional 2-note per string approach, I'm extending the shape to a 3-note per string pattern. So these stretch pentatonic shapes give me more options when it comes to phrasing and being creative. And the reason why this particular lick is a great exercise is because of its focus on rhythm. So when I play this for you, you can clearly hear 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3. So I really love and really recommend working with small rhythmic groups like that in your licks to make them more interesting phrasing wise. It's much less predictable than playing something like that's not that interesting, right? So after that cool rhythmic 3-2-3 approach, I'm playing a quick and nice sweep picking arpeggio featuring one note that's not in the E minor pentatonic, F sharp. That's the major second or ninth, and I love to add this one to the pentatonic scale. That one is quite tricky because you have to bar with your index finger and you also have those harmonics to deal with. You really don't want them right here. So that's another great practical finger rolling exercise to separate the notes. And in this case it's perfectly fine to help out a little bit with your right hand by muting. So practicing this lick is perfect for you in case you're into the pentatonic sound and you're a little bit tired of playing the same old licks over and over again. I think the stretch pentatonic shape combined with that cool rhythmic approach will really spice up your playing. By the way, did you know that I make videos like this one every single week? And did you know that you probably keep missing the majority of them because you're not subscribed to this channel? That's a real tragedy that keeps me awake at night. So if you learned a thing or two by now, make sure to click the little red button, because that way you will never miss out on your free weekly guitar progress boost. This is another really cool one that you might have recognized from the latest album Elevation. I added the Spotify link down below in case you didn't check it out yet. You will really love this record if you're as much into guitar music as I am. So what's interesting here immediately is the dissonance at the beginning of the lick. It essentially sounds so crazy because those two notes are just a semitone apart, so one fret, but instead of playing them like this, I'm letting those notes overlap, so I'm playing E right here and F on top. So those two notes are really rubbing against each other, and that creates this awesome sounding dissonance. And up next, the picking approach is actually really interesting. It's essentially a mix of sweep picking, economy picking, and just strumming chords. So with this modular picking technique, I'm consciously letting the notes overlap with my fretting hand, and I'm performing a very rhythmic picking motion with my right hand. With this lick, it's always 3 downstrokes followed by 3 upstrokes, then 3 downstrokes and 3 upstrokes again. As you can see in the transcription, you always have those repeating low and high notes. And that's how you get this crazy sound. Before I made a full tutorial of this technique and a full course on it on Patreon, I got a lot of messages asking how I'm doing this. For example, in the chord riff of Dopamine, or with this section in the Kindling that I'm showing you right now. So I highly suggest learning it in case you're not familiar with this modular picking approach yet. It sounds really unique, and you can apply it both to chords and rhythm guitar. And also guitar solos and arpeggios, of course. So if you want to learn more about how this technique works and how to practice it, make sure to check out the full course I made for it on Patreon. So this is a really cool economy picking trick that I like to use for licks that revolve around 2 strings and that have this cool neoclassical arpeggio sound. As you can see in the transcription below, I'm just working with downstrokes right here, and they are executed in a sweeping or economy picking motion on the D and G string. So I'm not attacking the strings individually like this. It's a smooth and connected downward motion like this, so just like when you're sweep picking. So I'm not doing this. It looks like this, a connected downward movement. Traditionally, you will often see licks like this played with alternate picking. And that's fine, you can definitely do it this way, but it's a little bit harder to speed up because of the constant string transitions. You're constantly going back and forth between those 2 strings. So when you replace most of the picking strokes with legato, with your fretting hand, and you add this easy economy picking trick, so just that downward motion across the strings, you get this amazing result. So that's much easier than it looks, because it's really just a relaxed downstroke movement. You don't have to do this anymore. That can be a bit exhausting once you speed things up. That, on the other hand, is quite easy to speed up because it's a very relaxed and small movement. And I can also feel it in my fretting hand right now. That's a great workout for your fingers. So if you enjoy the neoclassical shredding sound and you want to work on building some economy picking chops, that's the lick and exercise for you. Alright, let's work on those sweep picking and tapping skills. This lick has a lot of technique benefits. Usually metal guitar players are only practicing minor arpeggios, which is a shame, because in a practical context you will need major arpeggios like this quite often, because even in minor keys you have major chords, of course. So when you want to write really impressive sweep picking arpeggio etudes and solos, you will need major arpeggios as well, and this one is a great exercise because, once again, you have to bar the strings with your middle finger, and this time you have to separate 3 different strings. So as you can hear, I really focus on separating those notes. I don't want them to overlap like this, and I also want to avoid the natural harmonics in this section. Again, it's perfectly fine to help out a little bit with your picking hand by palm muting. And the next detail that makes this one so cool is extending the arpeggio by tapping, but not just on the highest string, which is very common, also on the lowest string of the arpeggio when you're going back down again. That sounds really, really cool, and I love extending arpeggios this way, especially on the lower strings, because you don't really hear it that often. Usually when you think about sweep picking arpeggios and tapping, you think of something like this. So really just extending the upper range of the arpeggio with one note. But with this lick and exercise, I want to inspire you to think outside of the box a little bit by also extending the arpeggios on lower strings. Aside from that being a great technique workout, so combining sweep picking with tapping in a very fluid way, I think it will also make you much more creative with your arpeggio sections. And as always, I saved the best for last. I want to show you a really cool and new multi-finger tapping approach that I currently use to extend arpeggio shapes beyond the stretching limitations of my fretting hand. You're probably familiar with 8-finger tapping, so using all of the fingers to create interesting scale and arpeggio combinations. But most players don't really think about multi-finger tapping when they have a pick in their hands. So they usually just work with the middle finger, just like we discussed with the previous example, keeping the pick between the thumb and index finger and just using the middle finger for tapping. But to make things even more interesting, and what I want to show you with this lick, is also using your ring finger for tapping, so your middle finger and your ring finger, while still keeping your pick between your index finger and thumb. Let me show it to you a bit slower. So as you can see, I'm tapping E on the 12th fret on the high E string with my middle finger, just like I would normally do it. But then I'm also tapping F on the 13th fret with my ring finger, and then I'm pulling off to E, and that's the trickiest part. So I'm not just tapping F, I'm also pulling off back to E and then pulling off again. So that's kind of tricky, but it allows you to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes on one string. And that's a big game changer when you're going for more interesting licks, because it's pretty much impossible to play it just with one hand. And at the end I included a more traditional 2-finger tapping approach, so just tapping an interval. So I'm just tapping G on the 12th fret on the G string and B on the 12th fret on the B string. And once again, the trickiest thing, I don't want these notes to overlap, so it should sound like this. Alright, make sure to head over to Patreon right now to get your slow exercise play-along videos for each lick and 15 additional guitar technique and theory courses. I added the link for you down below in the description and also in the first comment. Joining our amazing practice environment of over 6,000 dedicated players on Patreon is exactly what you need to finally kickstart your own guitar progress starting today. I'm waiting for you over there, so let's get in touch. Until then, thanks for watching and have an amazing day. Bye bye.